All right, welcome to Module 3, the video on library functions. So library functions are predefined functions. They're part of libraries. All you need to do is include that library in your program and you can use those functions. They're used to not reinvent the wheel. There's a ton of functions out there and a ton of libraries out there, and they've been tried and tested. So the library functions that we will be using in this course are, we will be using stdio.h. So we have this library that we've already been using, and we've already used printf, scanf, and that's to print to the screen and scan in from the keyboard. We will also be using these functions, fprintf, fscanf, fopen, and fclosed, and that will be used for file processing. We have not started doing file processing yet, but we will be doing that soon. The other library we will use is Ctype.h. This is used for characters, so this is used for character processing. And the functions that we will use are toUpper. So what the toUpper function does is it takes a character and it changes it to uppercase. The toLower function takes a character and changes it to lowercase. And in the case that if you make a function call to the toLower and you give it a character that's already lower, it'll just still be lower. The function isUpper. This one would return a 1 if the character that you pass to it is an uppercase letter, and this function would return a 1 if the character that you pass to it is a lowercase letter. And then we will later on in the semester, when we start doing character arrays, we will use string member functions or C-style string member functions, and these are the functions that we'll be using then. All right, so the library functions, I just went over that. For stdio.h is printf, scanf, and file processing functions. In ctype.h, so I'll give you an example of how ctype.h functions work. Oops. All right, so let me give you an example of how ctype.h functions work. And so if you have a character like char letter, and it equals, say, A, and then you have another letter, char let. So you could call, as long as you include ctype.h in your program, you could say let equals toUpper and pass it letter. And in this case, if you did that, if you were to print let onto the screen or do anything with let, then let would then be a capital A. But you could also say let equals toLower and pass it letter. And then after that, let would be lowercase a. All right, another way you could use the toUpper or toLower functions is if you wanted to get input and you wanted to make sure all of your input is the same case. So you could have char let, and then you could prompt, which would be printf, enter a letter. Then you could scanf, remember to go space %C into address of let or ampersand let. And then if you wanted to make sure every time you get that your letters are all uppercase or all lowercase because you want to be consistent, you could just say, I want to take that let that you just gave me and I want to call the toUpper function. So even if you entered a lowercase, and I'm going to pass it the letter that you just gave me. So when it comes in, it's going to be whatever letter you gave me. Just say, for example, you gave me a lowercase b. That would be the input to the function. Then the function toUpper would be called. And when the function toUpper finishes getting called, it's going to return, or it would be the output from the function. would then be the uppercase version of it. So these functions you will probably be using for your programming assignment, your game guessing assignment. You're going to have to know how to change to upper and to lower. It's pretty straightforward. Is upper and is lower, like I said before, is upper will return a 1 if the character that's passed to it is uppercase, and is lower will return a 1 if the character passed is lowercase. So there's some other library functions that we will most likely not be using in this class, but they do exist. There's absolute value from the std standard library.h, and then there's from math.h, there's a power function and a square root function and a ceiling function, a floor function, and there's a whole bunch of functions out there that are available. We just are not going to utilize many of them in the class, but I am going to do a quick demonstration on some math functions. So we're going to open up Visual Studio right here, and we're going to do a quick demonstration here on math functions. So here I have my algorithm. I'm using math.h library, and what I want to do is have the user, well, let's just read the algorithm. So number 1, I'm going to ask the user to enter a double. Then I'm going to get the number from the user. Then I'm going to print the number from the user rounded to the floor. So if the user enters 16.546, then it rounded to the floor, it's going to be a 16. Rounded to the ceiling, if it's 16.56, it would be rounded to 17. So then I'm going to round it to the floor, then I'm going to round the number to the ceiling and print the number rounded to the ceiling. And then I'm also going to use the square root function, which is also in the math.h library, and print that onto the screen. This code is available for you on Canvas for you to download and put into your compiler and try. So let's just take a look at the code now. I have #include stdio.h because I'm going to be scanning and printing. And I have math.h so that I can use the ceiling function, the floor function, and the square root function. So I'm declaring my variable. This is the number I'm going to get from the user. This is my ceiling value, and this is my square root value. So I'm going to ask the user to enter a number. They enter the number. Then I'm going to go ahead and call the round to the floor function from in the printf function call. You can see here I'm calling the floor function, and right here, and what that's going to do is it's not going to change what the number is, it's just going to call the floor function, and for this printf statement, it's going to round it to the floor. And then I'm going to do it a different way here by calling the ceil function and having the result of the ceil function assigned to a new variable called ceil value, and print that onto the screen. And then I'm going to call the square root function. Again, this is the name of the function, is the square root function. The data that's being passed to it is the input, or the number, and the result, or the output, is being returned by the square root function, is the square root val. So let's build this and make sure that it works. And let's try it. So it says to enter, I said 16.57. It's very hard to see because it's very small, but rounded to the floor it's 16, rounded to the ceiling it's 17, and the square root of 16.57 is 4.07. So please feel free to download this code and put it into your compiler and try different things with it and practice reading code.